If you haven't set a PR in the snatch or clean and jerk in a while, it's probably because of one of these 5 reasons. Most people think it's reason number 1, the training program. But in reality, it's actually more than likely reason number 3 or reason number 5. And in episode 38 of the Last Set, Best Set podcast, Coach Calvin and I are going to dive deep on each of these top 5 reasons that you haven't hit a PR. And if you're new to the channel and love learning about Olympic weightlifting, getting strong, and building muscle, then make sure to subscribe. Welcome back to the Last Set, Best Set podcast. I'm Coach Brian. I'm the owner of Big Ben Strength. I've been teaching Olympic lifting for the last 11 years now.
And I am Coach Calvin. I'm current captain of Lindenwood University's Olympic weightlifting program, as well as a coach through Big Ben Strength and 2025 National University Champion.
And today we're going to be answering some questions that you guys submitted to us, starting with question number 1. What are the 5 biggest reasons that you haven't hit a PR? We're going to go and kind of break down some of the big reasons that people just aren't making progress in their training and ultimately leading up to that one big thing, which is hitting PRs in the snatch and clean and jerk. So let's go ahead and get right into it. First thing is going to be programming. You want to talk on this for a little bit?
For sure. Programming, people kind of get into the weeds quite a bit on it. You know, they really looked for that perfect program. And I'll be honest, guys, this is the worst advertising I could do for our program. Because, you know, if I was the smartest business person and cared like soullessly about making as much money as possible, I would tell you that there's something different about our programs, and that we're just like, you know, the training is way different. It's not. We put a lot of work into the backside of things, so you're getting a lot of videos, you're getting a Discord, you're getting so many resources that come out with our programs. So we do a lot to make the experience really good. The actual programming side of things, you know, people got this figured out. You know, most coaches have programming figured out. They know a progression that works. I will say, you know, there's ones out there that are kind of idiots. You look at the program, you're like, holy hell, like, how is this working? Or max out every day kind of people, or, you know, maybe they never go heavy. You know, that's okay. You know, there's variation, though, when it comes to programming, and there's some really important principles that are generally understood by most coaches, that as long as your program has these, you're in good shape. And so just to name a few of them, progressive overload, you know, you need to be adding more somehow over time, you know, whether it's weight or volume, or you have to be overloading the body to cause, you know, an adaptation. You got to have some kind of phasic structure, meaning like you have to go from a period of high volume to a period of lower volume, and typically along with that comes intensities lower to intensities higher. That's pretty easy stuff.
Intensity meaning weight on the bar, for people who don't know.
Intensity meaning, like absolute weight that you're using in your training. It can also be relative intensity, you know, doing a max push press. It doesn't fatigue your body as much, but it's still, you know, a max push press. So it's still going to fatigue you in that way. So there's another thing, is SRA curves. So this is something important that you learn if you're picking an exercise science major like I am. And this is basically you have a stress that brings you below baseline on your performance level. So say baseline performance, right? Just where you're at right now. You go do a workout, you can't perform to baseline anymore. You get sore, you just can't hit the same numbers, right? You go max your snatch, you can't do the same thing the next day. It's just how it works. But, you know, a couple days later, you start to come back up, back to baseline, and the important part, probably a little bit above baseline. You adapt. There's a little adaptation that happens. And this is on a really small scale. You stack these up over a really long period of time and it makes progress. But if you're just going heavy every day, killing yourself, you're just going down. You're never coming back up to baseline or even above baseline. So some programs, you know, they're throwing too much at you. So that comes to the next part, which is managing fatigue. I like to go by the high-low method. So you have high neural days, low neural days. So high neural days are just, you know, back squats take a lot out of you. This is a high neural exercise when you push it hard. Bicep curls or strict press does not take a lot out of you, even when you push it pretty hard. That's the difference between high and low neural. So alternating, let's say if you train 5 days a week, you got 3 high neural days and 2 low neural days smashed in the middle of those. This is a great way to manage your fatigue and make sure you're not breaking down like crazy over time. Okay, so all this to say, the program, as long as it's following some pretty general principles, um, it's probably a decent enough program to make progress on. And you are the other part of this equation. So how you approach the program is the most important part. The program's just a guideline. There's so many other aspects about training, like how you're warming up for that session, what primer drills or technique drills you're doing in your warm up, what kind of cool down or accessories, prehabs you're doing, as well as, some like other considerations like how you're sleeping and what your food's like. Don't say your program's bad if you're sleeping 6 hours a night. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But so there's a lot else that goes into how you approach a program or how you change when you're not ready on that day. If the program says 90% and 80% moves awfully, are you still going to like ram your head through the wall trying to hit 90%? No, you have to know how to adapt for that program, especially if you use a more RPE based approach like we do in a lot of our big bench strength programs. I know like my 12-week volume program that we just put out follows a pretty heavy RPE scale on the Olympic lifts. So it does matter how you approach it. We have percent guidelines too, but it matters how you approach those sessions, and you're not just hitting numbers that are on a program. It matters where you're actually at for that. All right.
And I think that really like so much of it just comes down to believing in the program and buying into it and just following, like sticking to the plan for long enough to actually get results from it.
Oh yeah, like honestly, like if your coach has a well thought out program, there's probably a good period of the year, I'll say even 3 or 4 months, probably at least, where the goal is not to hit max snatch or clean and jerk singles.
Mm-hmm.
There should
Everybody
be,
on the OlyStrong team right now is going, yep, we did fives, we did fours, we haven't touched a single in
dude,
in like 8 weeks,
they'll like comment on my stuff and be like, we heard you told Brian about volume. They're like, we hate you. I'm like, did
Yeah,
we have
sorry for the increase in death threats that you've been getting.
My 12-week weightlifting program is available in the description of this video. I put a lot of time into this 12-week program, and we also have a new 12-week volume cycle, perfect for this summertime, get you kind of jacked, as well as building a ton of work capacity for those Olympic lifts. A volume program like this is what most people are missing in their training. 12 weeks, going through 10s, 8s, and 6s in the strength movements. 3, 2, 1 in the Olympic lifts. It's going to get you set up for a really great school year of lifting if you're in high school, or if you're just a beginner lifter. This is going to set up your weightlifting career for a lot of success in the future. Be sure to go check both of those programs out down in the description below. Thank you. We had someone register for our camp that we're doing in a few weeks here, and they said, what did she say? It was like,
She said it's going to be a showdown for sure.
yeah, I'm coming to confront you in person about this 5x10 or something. I'm like, but yeah, the most important thing is that you're buying in, and there should be other little wins that you're chasing, whether it's PRing a set of 10 on squats, PRing snatch triples. You should be chasing other PRs. That's certainly important, but that heavy singles, if you have a good program, it's not your round. That's not that.
Absolutely. All right, let's go and get into the next thing here. Point number 2 for the reason that you're not hitting PR, surprise, surprise, technique. I think pretty much every weightlifter probably assumes that we're going to talk about this at some point, but that doesn't mean that it's not an important aspect. Just because you know that it's the casual thing that everybody says is holding them back, it doesn't mean that it's not actually the thing that's holding you back. It is super important. And at the end of the day, like technique is, I think a lot of people think that technique is something that your coach makes you do and it's holding you back from hitting bigger lifts. Good technique should help you hit more on the bar, like should help you put more weight on the bar. Like that's the end of the day. Now here's how people kind of mess this up. I think a lot of people try and chase perfection in their technique, and like I think the spirit of the goal is good, right? You're always trying to make some progress and be intentional with your training. I think that's super important. But I think also having the understanding that it's never going to be perfect, and that you'll have it super dialed in, and then the weights will ramp up a little bit, and then things will start to pop up again.
Yeah, so there's sort of those two weightlifters that miss on the technique side of things. there's the one weightlifter that never thinks about anything or just like waits till something starts breaking down to work on their technique. That's a big mistake I see. People just go through the motions until something happens, and they're just like
Right.
being reactive about their training. Don't be reactive. Get in front of it. Know what your issues already are. Know what's gonna happen when you get heavy, and drill them. Work on them in every warm up set up to that.
Yeah. Because surprise, surprise, it's not going to be something new this time. It's going to be the same thing that you had happen last week and the same thing that you had happen before. And you're just not focusing on it, like just not drilling it enough.
Yeah, I like, and it's tough doing one-on-one online coaching. You know, I don't get to see a lot of my athletes warm ups. I will ask them to film some primer drills. I'll just say, hey, like I need you to film this primer drill. And honestly, there's not much I can get from watching them do tall jerks or tall cleans at the beginning of their workout. You know, as long as they know how to do them, I just tell them that so they make sure they're doing it.
And so because when they're filming, they're going to be probably a little bit more intentional about it
they're
too.
gonna watch it. They're gonna be like, oh, I'm sending this to coach. Like, so spoiler alert, if any of my athletes are watching this, I don't actually care about watching your primer drills. To make you take videos so that you're actually thinking about what you look like in them and what you're doing. So yeah, exposing myself here, but anyways, yeah. So that's the one person. Is the person who's not intentional at all. Then you go to the other side, and you have the person who's so obsessed with every little feeling that's different that they can barely put any weight on the bar. You know, they're living in 50-kilo snatches because they're trying to perfect it. They're trying to
Mm,
they're going to do the PVC pipe in between because they're just feeling it.
yeah.
And this is like a couple of people that I train in person here in St. Louis. They we have one girl who I'm not even kidding. Before she was already in the bottom of the snatch, is already shaking her head like I just like she's not even on the way up in the snatch yet, and she's like, and we're like, what are you doing? We got a rule that she's got to do some push-ups if she acts pissed off about her lift. So, anyways,
That was one of my first like really good lifters, and that's a fallacy that a lot of people struggle with. Is like there is an aspect of focusing on your technique, a level of it that you need to have to get better at the sport, and it'll help you get really good really fast. But then sometimes the duality of that is that it won't support you any longer. So like what got you here won't get you there. Um, and they almost like always beat themselves up about their technique because it was never good enough to their standard. And that was a big problem that they had, and they always wanted to stay light because of that.
yeah, you have to have a certain tolerance for technique breakdown, especially on heavy weeks. And this is how I build a lot of my programs is through a technical model where like you have a base week, first week of the program where you're kind of going the heaviest you can without something breaking down. We call that RP7 our programs.
And maybe like a little bit more in the 10. Because sometimes you do an RPE 6 or 7 on week 1.
Yeah, we'll do RP6 every now and then, and that's more just to like get you used to the style of programming under like if you haven't trained in a bit, like that's a good intro week. But typically, if I do a 3-week block, it's RP7, RP8, RP9, and that RP8 is like that first weight where something starts breaking down. And then that RP9 is going to be the pretty much max without being a max. Like that's like heavy single territory.
Mm-hmm.
I never really put RP10 on my programs because I just kind of trust my athletes. Like, hey, if you're feeling good, you push it. Like, I'm never going to tell you to max out. I'm never going to be like, you are hitting the max weight you possibly can today, no matter how you feel. So the athletes understand, and they should understand that even if it's an RP8 day, if you feel fantastic, there's always some room to push that.
And the beautiful part about that is that because the RPE is based on a technical model, it's an actual real feeling good that day, where people a lot of the time are feeling good, but their lifts look like trash, right?
Yeah.
So like it's based on a number of aspects of your technique that are breaking down. At RPE 8, it's one aspect. At RPE 9, it's 2 aspects or more.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit more reasonable way to say, like, you're hitting an RPE 8, but, you know, it's significantly heavier than what you could normally do. So maybe that's a good day to go heavy.
Yeah, or, very possible to hit PRs at RP8,
Yeah.
Like I love when I go train on pound plates, when I go from my normal kilo plates to pound plates because I'm not thinking about the kilo weight on the bar. I can kind of
Yeah.
just add weight. If I got a 35, two 25s, and a 10 on the bar, I'm not counting it.
Yeah.
I'm too lazy. I'm too lazy. I'm gonna go by feel. That is a great exercise, by the way. Like, to really challenge yourself and have a good training session is train on some plates and don't some whether you train on pound plates, switch to kilos or the other way around, and just don't even think about what you're adding and have a bar that looks like maybe if you go from pounds to kilos, maybe you got you know yellow, blue, green, white, little red, like you don't even know
Weird
what
loading.
yeah, you don't even know what it is. And then you're only focused on how you're moving. Some people don't realize how much they focus on the number on the bar.
Yeah.
You can make a lot of progress if you just focus on how you're moving and how your body's actually going. This is something my coach kind of harps on, and it's funny because my coach is colorblind. He literally a lot of the times he cannot even see the weight on the he can't really tell what weight's on the bar. Um
I
and
wonder
so
how that's influenced his approach.
I'd say it definitely lends to this more technical model because
Yeah.
I mean, and also, let's be honest, you coach weightlifting for long enough, you got 30 athletes at once. Like you're not like that's
Right.
especially when people load it weird. But yeah, being colorblind, that kind of thing contributes to his he's looking at our weights and he's not like, well, that moved okay for 140. Like
Right.
he's just like they're doing this in their technique. And there's some aspects where it's like, okay, once you get to like 160, 170 in a jerk, like you're gonna have like some pretty significant whip. But you can also just see that in the bar.
Hmm.
You can look when you got a really good weightlifting eye, you can look and see that they're not using the whip well or that the whip's killing them.
Right.
So the weight on the bar does not matter when it comes to these kind of training days. There's other days where it really does matter, and you should be very aware. You're in competition prep. You should probably know what weight is on the bar because you need to decide on what your opener is going to be. You need to know what you're going to hit out there.
Hmm.
But in this kind of regular training phase, that technical model, that technical focus is super, super important. And Brian, we were just talking about a video Max Ada made about Russian training. And he said that that's kind of one of the main, kind of aspects of their training is they have a lot of work between 70 and 80, 70 and 85%, where they can be really crisp on their technique. And
Yeah.
it's funny because we talked about that video, but my coach actually printed out something too in our gym, and it was just a piece of paper, and it was like a summary of Russian weightlifting, and it showed the amount of reps they spent in each zone throughout the year, or like the
Mm.
percentage of reps that were spent in each zone. And yeah, exact same thing, like Max was saying in that video was they spend the majority of their reps between 70 and 80, 70 and 85%. And it's something like only like 5 to 10% of reps are above 90%.
And I would be willing to bet most people's programs don't actually reflect that.
Yeah. Or, especially if you look at relative intensity, we're talking about absolute here. So above 90% of their one rep max PR all time. If we look at relative intensity, people are probably more often than not spending, I'd say like 30 to 40% of their reps above like a 80% relative intensity for that day.
I would agree.
Which I'm not going to say is a bad thing. Sometimes you need to have a good relative intensity. We talk about different ways you can change the workout. So like I mentioned with the push press earlier, you know, doing a max push press, so it might be 100% relative intensity, but it's only 110 kilos and my clean and jerk is 150 or 140. Like, okay, it's not that fatiguing on my body comparatively.
Right.
So it depends on Depends on what you're doing. That's not like a bad thing if you're at a higher relative intensity all the time.
But the reason that it's so important is because, because they spent so much time in that 70 to 80% range with
Yeah.
sub-maximal weights, is that they were able to just really have solid technique. Every single lift that they did looked super crisp all the time because they
Yep.
just they weren't pushing themselves to that max weight. Where, he compared it against the Bulgarian approach, which is like those lifters looked pretty rough. Now,
Ugh.
granted, like they were able to, hit some of those top end weights, but it was inconsistent. Like sometimes they would hit a weight that, should have been an 80% weight. And it looked like an absolute max. And you would not even think that they'd be able to add more weight. And then they would add it, and sometimes it would look better, right? And so, their issue is that they were technically inconsistent, but capable of hitting bigger weights. And then the Russians were technically consistent and pretty much always knew what they were going to be capable of on competition platform. It's kind
You
of
look at
interesting.
you look at like a table of like all-time medals earned, and the Soviet Union, Russia, like that and China are like at the top for like total medals earned in world championships or in the Olympics. And the crazy thing that I saw, that I thought was crazy, is that like most of Russia's medals are all like before women's weightlifting was really a big thing. And then a great percentage of China's medals are from women's weightlifting. So if
Interesting.
you just compare the men's side of things, Russia is crazy dominant. So
Wow.
it kind of it does throw off some of the numbers when you consider the really successful Chinese women's program, and compare it that way. So
And,
that's kind
and I think it would also be interesting to see what that looks like across Soviet style programs. Like it's not just Russia, but like all of the countries around in that Soviet Union who are probably
of
basing a lot of their training with the same
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, Romania, Ukraine, like
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan, yeah, a lot of these easterny kind of block. What do you call that? Like,
Yeah, Eastern Bloc countries.
yeah, and like especially I can tell the Ukraine, head coach actually moved to the U.S. And he now coaches in Texas. And I've talked with him a little bit, and he definitely takes a very high technical focus, but it's sort of still blended with like a lot of intensity as well. But
Interesting.
but the way he coaches is very, very technical. It's very, very ingrained in technique, where it's like you look at maybe a more Bulgarian style thing, and it's just like there's not even a technical focus, like in most
Yeah,
sessions or most workouts that they're doing. It's just like
right.
getting through the session. You hear stories of Bulgarian lifters who would drop the bar and pretend like they did a rep when Abajev wasn't looking.
I love. I could go on, and I've talked about these stories with my kids all the time. It's so funny.
Yeah, and people love to hear it because it's the most intense training system. But I'll tell you, those Russians, they figured out some stuff about sports science that was so ahead of their time. Back in the 80s and 90s. We watch Rocky Four or whatever. You see like they got these crazy scientists and whatever. Um, but there's some truth to that. They had a lot of money put into getting people better at sports. And
I'm gonna drop a dad story here,
okay,
a weightlifting story. But apparently, the only reason that steroids exist is because, and this is all hearsay. I don't know if this is actually true, but this is weightlifting legend that I've heard was that back in around York barbell times, where Americans were super dominant in weightlifting for a while, actually. Um, they were at a competition in Russia. I think it was a world championships of some kind. And they were all like the Russians were like trying to figure out how they were so good. And the American coaches lied and said that they had like Captain America super serum that was making everybody strong. And so Russia was like, "Oh, okay." And then they actually just went in and invented steroids. They invented the super serum that the American coaches were just joking about that they had. And so so that is what led to the birth of incredible weightlifting um, Allegedly. I don't actually know if that's true. But we have spent about 15 minutes talking about technique here.
Yeah.
The big takeaway on this should be that you should know what your technique errors are, and it shouldn't be something that you're figuring out on any given day. And then you should be focusing on them. Like your training should be focused around it, your programming should be focused around it. You should be intentional around the technique that you're doing and not just focused on the weight on the bar, because at the end of the day, it's not going to lead to as much progress as technique focus will likely, especially in your first several years of development.
Yeah, to kind of recap, we're talking about, the 5 reasons why you haven't hit a PR. Number 1, programming. Number 2, technique. And now, number 3.
Taking a quick break from the episode to let you know about the OlyStrong team. The OlyStrong team is my online group coaching option for lifters who are looking to improve their technique, get strong, and set PRs. It includes your choice of 3 or 5 days a week of workouts, daily video feedback, and unlimited coach messaging to ask as many questions as you'd like for less than $1 a day. If you're ready to get started, then click the link in the description below for a free week trial today. All right, back to the show.
It's going to be patience. So, number 3, it takes longer than you think. We've talked about this. Brian, you had a good saying, people overestimate what they can do in like a month or two, and they underestimate what they can do in a year or two. And you'll see this like bad programs or bad coaching systems will really squeeze a lot of performance out in the beginning. They're really trying to get a lot of wins for these athletes in the beginning, but then they're stuck forever because they pushed their Olympic lifts so hard that they got so efficient, but their legs aren't getting stronger. They weren't well-rounded. They weren't bringing everything up at once. And the different categories, some will come up and then others, and then but it's a general trend, everything going up. But
an interesting way to think about that too is it's kind of like maximizing what you already have. So like you'll see this in businesses all the time where people start like, they look at a business and then they're like, I really liked them when they first started, but then, it just at a certain point it felt like they were squeezing me for every dollar that I had. Where, businesses will say like they'll suddenly start turning super salesy and they'll just try and maximize the people that they have to the highest degree. And then they just burn them out. And then those people are now not loyal customers of you, right? Like it's kind of the same approach. They're trying to just get everything that they can out of this person. And then they just kind of discard them and they don't make any more progress instead of focusing on what would probably make them a better customer or a better athlete over a long period of time.
yeah, you see this happen a lot at the youth and junior level, trying to make Team USA teams. People are pushed to their absolute brink of exhaustion, and then they're stuck for a while after that because for so long they weren't working on, their general athletic development. They weren't doing volume and building up their work capacity, what you need to get better long term. They were just getting really efficient at the Olympic lifts, but with lackluster strength and general athleticism. And it works. I'll tell you, it works at getting your Olympic lifts better for so long, and then it does. So you need to have a lot of patience and kind of follow a program or have a mindset in your training that you're going to be chasing little wins that aren't always the single PR. It's going to be triple PRs. It's going to be double PRs. It's going to be rep PRs in the strength movements. What's my best set of 5? What's my best set of 10 on squats? And if you move those up over time and keep chasing those gradual wins, you'll hit, the 2 kilo PR snatch. Whereas the person who squeezes everything they have out of their snatch and hits a 10 kilo PR is stuck for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
You can set yourself up for little wins, 2 kilos here, 1 kilo there, another 3 kilos, this other day. Maybe you have a great day. It's a 5 kilo day. But over the long term, it keeps you enjoying training more, keeps you more excited to come in when you know that, you're going to make some progress soon. Instead of squeezing everything you have out of yourself to hit some huge PR that you're never going to touch for the next year.
And the psychological aspect of that is really important too, because when you talk about like you take somebody on as an athlete and then you just try and like get as much performance out of them as they possibly can in that first little bit of time that you're working with them, they're going to expect that all the time going forward. They're like, this is the new standard. This is what I need to expect all the time. And you as the coach know that's not going to be the case. it's a little dishonest to say that unless you're communicating to them like, hey, we'll maximize what we have right now, but then we're gonna have to take a period of time where we're focused more on the long term, right? Communicating that is super important. But if you do that from the get-go and you like say, hey, we are focused on the long term, we're going to focus on these little wins and build and stack progress over a long period of time, all training feels exciting because you're not constantly down on yourself for what you think you should be able to do based on how you started training by really trying to maximize those numbers right away.
And this is what good coaches do. To get good at weightlifting, you have to do it for 6, 7, 8, 10 years. How do you keep it interesting? How do you
Yeah.
keep that athlete excited to come into the gym when it's snatch, clean and jerk, squat, pull? That's basically, the bread and butter. We got like four things we're like really working on. How else what else do you give them? Whether it's accessory work that's exciting, whether it's rep schemes that are new or PRs that are new, right? Like I see Hampton Morrison, he's hitting a PR at least kind of every other week, but it's always on something kind of like crazy, right? It's always, maybe it's a hang clean triple PR or, low block, clean double PR, and the last time he did those was, 6 months ago, but still it's a PR. He's still showing progress. He's hitting he's in his volume phase. He's hitting a strict press PR for 10. He's hitting back squat PR for 7 sevens in back squat,
Yeah.
whatever, like,
Dude,
you know,
I said this in, I think it was actually in one of your welcome sequences for one of your emails, but
yeah.
progress is everywhere if you look for it. But a lot of people try and just force it. It's everywhere if you look for it. You're probably making PRs honestly on a weekly basis if you're following a good program. You just don't know it because you're not looking for it.
I will say though, if you're the kind of person that posts, oh, first time hitting 150 twice on a Tuesday with no belt,
Baseball stats.
I'm judging you. I'm still judging you.
Yeah.
But this still should be something kind of in your head. Oh, I've never done this weight without a belt.
Yeah.
But if you're like bragging about it on your Instagram story, then I kind of start to be like, come on now. But
Now, the only way that it's okay is if you stack like 9 of them on, so we can really tell that you're hamming it up here.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think the no knee sleeves and no belt PRs are the ones that I really just couldn't give a shit about.
yeah, it's like just post the lift. You don't have to tell us that this was a PR with no belt. In my opinion, you could just post it,
100%.
and it's just as valid by itself. Um, anyways, so that was kind of patience. It takes a while. The tortoise beats the hare in the long term. If you want to get really good at weightlifting, like I said, 6 to 8 to 10 years of training. How are you going to make it interesting? How are you going to be excited to come into the gym? Um, and are you willing to accept that there might be long periods without heavy single PRs,
Hmm.
chasing rep PRs, that kind of stuff? All right.
It's really, I mean, it's also just really a good sign of like, how much do you love the sport? Do you love the sport when you're not making PRs on a weekly basis?
Oh yeah.
Because you're gonna have to figure that out at some point. And there's a really good quote that I really like. It's patience is figuring out what to do in the meantime. So if you know that it's going to take 10 years until you actualize your potential in weightlifting, it's just figuring out what you're going to do in the meantime because that time's going to pass either way. And so,
Yeah.
I think I really like that. And it's kind of a good frame for me. Okay, so the next reason here, reason number 4 that you are not setting PRs in training is your mobility. Nobody likes to talk about mobility. Mobility is probably the most boring thing to talk about and even more boring to do, but it is absolutely a huge factor in your Olympic list. I mean, realistically, it plays a bigger part than people want to give it credit for. Now, I think that this is something that applies to one group of people who struggle with their mobility. Some people, it is not even a factor for them. It doesn't cross their mind. They're not really worried about it. They do a couple leg swings. Their mobility's great. Um, for the rest of us who do struggle with mobility, a lot of the time, people will try and solve mobility problems like they are technique problems. And sometimes mobility problems will present as technique problems. So a really good example of this, I was talking with somebody the other day, is about speed under the bar and the snatch. They're really trying to work on being fast under the bar in the snatch. And it's just something they always power a little bit more than they can full snatch. We got talking about it, and really what we came down to the conclusion was that their overhead position is just not very good And so they can't get there fast because they can't get there well. Another example of that is people who struggle with timing in the jerk, where they are always just kind of pressing that bar early in the drive instead of really maximizing their leg drive. And so they're causing, press out issues or catching with bent elbows. It's causing some problems, right? People may try and solve that with more techniques, more technique work rather than addressing the actual issue, which is maybe your front rack is just so trash that you can't help but be anything other than incredibly tense on that front rack position. So then you are pressing early, but it's not the pressing early that's the problem. It's the symptom of the actual problem, which is your mobility, right?
Yeah.
So making sure that, if you are analyzing a lot of your technique issues and you start kind of getting the suspicion that it might actually be a mobility problem, make sure that you're solving that as a mobility problem and not as a technique problem. Because I'm telling you, it is going to keep beating you up over and over and over again. And it's not actually going to get fixed. And every time, maybe you solve it for a little bit, but it's not going to be a long-term solution. What were you going to say?
So here's a really good way, I thought, of explaining, and I think this is the way that people should be thinking about mobility. And it applies to other training as well. And so I don't think I've ever mentioned this with you, Brian, but I'll just run you through it real quick. So let's say you really want to get tan this summer. So me and Brian, we both have some nice pasty complexion.
That's
So
right.
our audio listeners cannot tell, but we're like ghosts over here.
I do have to tell you, I've got a solid left to right tan. So my left arm, pretty great tan. Right arm, no tan. It's just because I have the window down all the time.
Yeah. So you want to really get tan this summer. Let's say you go out in the sun for an hour every day, right? Let's say every day an hour, right? You get really tan, this first couple days you're getting burnt at first, right? And then you start getting tan, and the next week you're getting even more tan. Do you just keep getting more tan forever?
Eventually it stops, right?
Eventually, probably after just, a week or two, you hit that peak where your body's like, okay, we've produced enough melanin to, protect you from this level of sun that you experience. The same thing is true in training, in weightlifting. This is why progressive overload exists. If you want to get more tan, you're going to have to do 2 hours every day. Or instead of going out when the UV's 8, go out when the UV's 10. And then you can still do an hour a week, hour a day, and you're still going to get more tan. But you have to somehow do more. And the same thing is true for mobility. It's not any different. If you're only doing, those 2 or 3 minutes of stretching, for a problem area, once, a couple times a week, your mobility has probably hit the point where it is tapped out at that level.
You have to have a stimulus. You have to apply enough of a stimulus to adapt to it, and that applies in mobility just like training.
You need to do more, probably, right? Whether it's twice a day doing those, exercise, those mobility stretching routine thing that you're doing for that problem area. Or it's more intense, you're doing some form of weighted stretching, you're doing let's say your front rack's really bad. Instead of just doing a chin-up dead hang, you strap some weight on you in a weight belt and you do a chin-up dead hang. Or you're doing some partner stretching where they can really get you a little more stimulus, right? It's about that stimulus. You need more. You need more if you want to get better. You can't just stay at the same. You can't just do 5 minutes of a specific range of motion a week and keep getting better from that over time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and using that same analogy that you said, I think I see this a lot. People will be like, I'm going to start doing mobility. And then they do a ton of mobility on day one, equivalent to just going out and roasting in the sun and getting a massive sunburn, and then not going back outside and, stacking it up. So it's like you can't just overdo it immediately, but you do have to do more than you're currently doing, and you have to do it consistently for a long enough period of time to actually see the results from it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the thing that I think so many people are missing out on, this, that have significant mobility problems that limit their lifting. but they're just not doing what they need to do to get that specific thing better.
Regularly enough and long enough.
Regularly enough, long enough, intense enough. A lot of people just skip it altogether, right? Which
Well, let's be honest. Yeah.
Olympic weightlifting training in itself, the level that you're doing, it probably helps your mobility quite a bit, but it only helps so much. You might have a specific thing for we said like your front rack's really, really tight. You might just need more than a regular one front squat a week and a couple clean variations and a jerk. Like, you just need more than that. Like,
Yeah.
because training in itself is mobility, right? Doing really deep squats, good mobility for your hips. But same thing as the sun. Okay, that's spending 1 hour a week in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you really want to get more tan at this point, we're gonna have to spend some more hours in the sun. We're gonna have to do more. So that's a good
Yeah.
analogy. I use that one when I'm talking to, especially like when I talk to like general athletes, like people that just want to get stronger or like go to the gym or gain some muscle. Like that's a good one to think about. I think it's easily understood.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you guys are struggling with mobility, we've got a free mobility guide. You guys can check it out. It's in the link in the description below. It's super simple. It is going to go over the 4 main areas that people have problems with. That's the front rack position, the overhead position in the jerk, the overhead position in the snatch, and the bottom of the squat. So if you struggle with any one of those areas, you go in, it's got a few different exercises for each one, and it's got a recommended protocol that I use with my people. If you want it, it's free. Go check it out. It's in the link in the description below. One thing I realized a few years ago as a burnt out weightlifter is that there's no rules for how a weightlifting program is supposed to look. You don't have to push through heavy snatches and clean and jerks on a daily basis, especially if this is a hobby for you. That's when I made the switch to OlyBuilding, a style of training with a true 50-50 balance between Olympic lifting and bodybuilding. Not just a few sets of some accessory work that is, let's be honest, lazily picked at the end of the workout. So if you want to focus more on building muscle without losing your Olympic lifts, then check out the 8-week OlyBuilding program linked in the description below. And you can save 20% at checkout when you use the discount code LASTSETPOD. All right, back to the show.
All right, number 5.
And the last one here is just, it's the other 23 hours that you're not in the gym. Like that's, let's be real, that is where most of the progress happens. Sure, you have to train your 1 to 2 hours a day. You have to train to get better. But beyond that, everybody else is doing that. Everybody else is training 1 to 2 hours a day and they're getting that stimulus. The reason that some people just seem like they can continue to make progress is because of what they're doing in the other 23 hours that they're not in the gym. So I kind of think of it like a pie, right? Training or your potential fitness is kind of like a pie. 1/3 of that is your training. 1/3 of that is your sleep, and 1/3 of that is your nutrition. If we're taking a look at the real big things that make a huge impact. A lot of people are fully maxed out in their capacity for the training. They're doing a great job on that. They're training regularly, probably following a good program, probably have a good coach. Awesome. Are you sleeping 8 to 10 hours a night? Are you doing that not just some nights, but every night? If not, you're leaving some gains on the table. Are you locked in with your nutrition? And, maybe you don't have to track everything, but you're getting a significant amount of protein in every day. You're making sure that you're eating enough to support your training and that to support like building muscle over time. Are you doing those things and not just, sporadically, not just, on Monday and Tuesday because you planned ahead on Sunday, but are you doing that even on Thursday, Friday, Saturday when it starts to get a lot harder and the stress of the week accumulates? That kind of stuff is really just going to be the separator. If you have to be out and about for work all day, like I've got an athlete who is struggling with their nutrition right now, and they're out teaching out in the sun all the time. Well, if it's really hot right now and you're sweating a lot, you're going to have to drink more water and you're probably going to have to eat more calories to keep up with what you're burning off. If you're not doing that kind of stuff, yeah, you can train as hard as you want, but your training's not going to make nearly the amount of progress that it will if you are focusing on the other 23 hours in the day. So that's my big thing. Do you have anything on that you want to talk about?
Yeah, we've done quite a few episodes where we, recommend some strategies for kind of reining in your life outside of the gym, whether it's just keeping the protein powder bag in your bathroom and making it a routine to do it every night and every morning. You're having a protein shake. Boom, now you just hit your protein every day because it's part of your routine now. It's like that's my biggest advice when it comes to the other 23 hours stuff is make it like brushing your teeth. Make it a routine. And there's days, maybe I'm gross, but sometimes I fall asleep and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't brush my teeth, in the morning.
Happens.
Brush it in the morning, it's still my habit, but this isn't like some sort of rigid structure where you need to die to make it happen. But if you're doing it 90% of the time, you know, then you're getting the pearly whites, then you're building the muscle. And yeah, no cavities and you got huge muscles. So there you go.
There it is. There it is. Yeah, I mean, kind of the big takeaway from that should be that like the goal is to make it easier to do all these things, not to just like Goggins your way through it,
Here's a really good thing I heard, because it was talking about like cardio or endurance stuff for weightlifters, and adding that in is good for your general health. It's good for your long-term health. Cardio is a good style of training to have, some zone 2 cardio, below what you call lactate threshold. It's just really easy is basically what I'm saying. Like effectively like the slowest pace you could jog at kind of cardio. Um, like that kind of stuff is really good for your health. But if you have to go and run it's a whole trip to the gym and you got to run on the treadmill and you got to be alone and you don't want to do it. It's a lot easier if you're like, oh, I'm gonna call my mom while I'm on my hike. Or, oh, I'm gonna ask so and so, my friend that I want to hang out with, to go on this hike with me, and then I'll enjoy it, and then it's social time. This is something I want to do now. So finding
Yeah.
ways to add in things that like aren't this like extra chore of training you have to check off, but you kind of like doing it. So, like a big thing for me is like when I'm in the school year, I love going to the dining hall because I get to hang out with all my friends in the dining hall. And like, yeah, that's great. Right after training, we all go to the dining hall and we all eat together. You go train, ask, a training partner, you want to get dinner after this, like, and then you're really excited to eat dinner. It's not like this big meal you got to force down like it is sometimes for me. I know that's a problem I have. I don't like to eat all the time. I don't have a very strong appetite, but you need to eat to get better. You need to eat to recover.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It's habit stacking, and even in different ways too. Let's say like you really like listening to audiobooks. So if you need to get your step count up, go and listen to an audiobook. It makes it a lot more enjoyable. You don't have to mental toughness your way through it. Or another way that I think about it is like for ADHD, this really helps me a lot. We call it body doubling, but just like you know. You have somebody else there who's doing something, doesn't even have to be the same thing that you're doing, but they're doing something, and just the energy makes it easier for you to also do the same thing. Really, really useful tool to help you lock in for the other third. So, if that's something that you struggle with, try and find somebody who can be your accountability buddy and help make that kind of stuff easier as well. It's always good. Um, I think we fully covered this topic. Let's go ahead. Those are the 5 things that are really holding back your progress. That is likely the reason that you're not making PR. So to recap that, your training program, you need to make sure that you follow a program that has the main principles of a good training program and that you buy into it and you stick with it for long enough to actually get the results. Technique, make sure that you are actually know what your technique issues are before you get to those top end weights, and that you're focusing on them not just in your top end sets, but all of your working sets and your warm up sets. So you're hammering this stuff over and over again, and it should probably be reflected in your training program as well. Number 3 here is patience, making sure that you understand that long term gains is how you get better at the sport. You're going to be much better at the sport in 10 years than you will in a year if you actually approach it with that mindset. Number 4 here is mobility, doing the stuff that you know you need to do on a regular enough basis and at an intense enough level to actually get a benefit from it, and not making sure that you're covering up your mobility issues by thinking of them as technique problems. And then number 5 here is making sure that your other 23 hours are dialed in just like you are dialed in with your training, that you're sleeping enough, that you're eating enough, and that if you struggle with those, to try and find some way to habit stack your way to make it easier, not harder. All right, guys, if you have made it this far into the podcast, we tricked you. You're at the very end. If you listen to the very end, you have to subscribe. It's the rules. I don't make the rules. You have to subscribe. And even better, is if you can leave a review on the podcast. We're really trying to get our reviews up on Apple. I think we've got like 5 on Spotify. I think we've got like 12. I would love to see if we can get those reviews up to 20 on Spotify. So that's our big challenge there, is let's see if we can get our 5-star reviews up to 20. That would be awesome. Otherwise, that's pretty much it for this week. Calvin, where can people find you?
At Calvin Lackey, 81 kg.
And you guys can find me at Big Ben Strike. Make sure to check all of our programs and coaching links down in the description below. We'll catch you guys next week. Bye.